What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. We have the effects of a whole bunch of TCG exclusive cards. This is my third time shooting this video. I'm trying to get it to be shorter so I don't have time to dilly dally. We know a whole bunch of Cosmo cards, not just because people have them in their hands, but they have been translated. Doesn't even matter that the Shining Victories sneak peek is, I think, next Saturday, because the Amigos already got them. We can see some of the rarities, like Secret. I can't tell if this is super or not. But anyways, let's jump into the cards. First up, Cosmo Dark Planet. We already knew about this card. We didn't know whether it was a monster, a spell, a trap. Most people assumed that it was a monster. That made the most sense. It is a machine, level 10, dark, 4,000 attack, 4,000 defense. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing Cosmo monsters from your hand whose levels equal 10 or more. And cannot be special summoned by any other ways. Cannot be targeted by opponent's card effects. That's built into pretty much all the spaceships at this point. All the big ones, like past Slip Rider and whatnot. During your player's turn, when a spell card is activated, you can banish one Cosmo monster from your graveyard. Negate the activation. If you do, destroy the card. If this card is destroyed by battle or a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Add one level 9 or lower Cosmo monster from your deck to your hand. So essentially, this is kind of like a walking magic jammer. It's just the cost to be paid is from the graveyard, which makes it infinitely like better. The first thing that I noticed that I didn't even notice the first time I looked at this card on my live stream is this effect that says during your player's turn, you can negate a spell by banishing a Cosmo monster. This is not once per turn, and that is kind of scary because all you guys who play Pendulum decks, I mean, imagine if you have to deal with this card and you don't have skills complete. Like, a Cosmo player is going to do everything on Earth to make sure you never get those 2 skills. They might even let you get 1 skill and just keep negating the second one. You know, your instant fusions and any other like power cards that you may want to play, just not going to happen. It's during either player's turn. This card is also a card that is not susceptible to the Monarch Stormfourth like all of the other Cosmo cards. It's not susceptible to, things like System Down. Some of those cards that we generally side against Cosmo, outside of Cyber Dragon, can't use it on this card. So I think Dark Planet is actually pretty solid, and the fact that you can banish a Dark Planet to summon another Dark Planet is actually pretty scary. So I mean, I might think that Dark Eclipser might come out of the deck and this card would go in, because the card is just it's better in my opinion than something like Dark Eclipser. Next up, we have Cosmo Dark Lady. Level 5, Dark Psychic. She's 2,200 attack, 1,800 defense. During either player's turn, you can banish this card, special summon a level 6 or higher Cosmo only once per turn. Once per turn during either player's turn, when another monster effect is activated, pay 1,000 life points to negate that activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Cosmo Dark Lady is flat out amazing to me. Not just because she's during either player's turn, but the fact that we just see how important monster effect negation is with a card like Solemn Strike. Yeah, Solemn Strike stops inherent summons too, like pendulums and all that other stuff. But just being able to negate hand effects, being able to negate graveyard, like against Burning Abyss and PK Fire and Monarch, like this effect is so good. I think this card, depending on the matchups, it could, to me, I think that you could easily swap out all your Slip Riders with like Dark Ladies in certain matchups, like against a deck like PK Fire where Spell and Trap Destruction isn't really that important. A card like this where you have an effect negation is like a lot more important, and 1,000 life points really isn't that much, considering Forerunner can give you 1,000 life points if people still even run Forerunner. I don't even know if they're gonna run it anymore. Next up, we have Cosmo Fearful Lion. Level 2 Psychic, so it's a teleport target, 1,200, it's light, 500 defense. During your player's turn, you can banish it, summon a level 3 or higher Cosmo monster once per turn, of course, with that effect. The once per turn effect is, once per turn, you can pay 500 life points, target 3 of your banished Cosmo monsters, return them to the graveyard. If you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. I don't like this effect at all. I've tried looking at this card at least 3 or 4 times from every angle. I just think it's completely mediocre. For one, it's not up to 3, it's just 3. So if you only have 2 banished cards, you can't even activate the effect. If you only have 1, you can't activate the effect. It has to be exactly 3. Number 2, 500 burn damage is so like not relevant. Even something like Babar, where it can do 900. That's kind of like cowboy territory, you know. Anything above like 800 is very relevant, but 500, just if it was like 500 per monster, I'd be like, okay, that's pretty good. Like, but 500 damage is nothing. Like, I don't think you'd ever run this card in the foreseeable future. And it actually makes sense because if you ever seen The Wizard of Oz, in my opinion, by far, the lion is the worst character out of like the what's it called? The Scarecrow and the Tin Man and Dorothy and all the witches. Like, the lion is easily the worst character. Next up, we have Cosmo. Continuous trap card. It says, monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, or excuse me, monsters destroyed by battle by Cosmo monsters are shuffled into the deck instead of being sent to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard this turn the first time you would take battle damage involving a Cosmo monster you control. You gain that much life points instead. Okay. This is important because I like this card. Number one, it gives Cosmos a second way to gain life points because as far as I know, all they really have is Slip Rider, or I mean, excuse me, all they have is really Forerunner that gives you 1,000 per turn, but all the monsters, you know, they pretty much cost life points to activate their effects. Number two, this is a card that is really, really hella disruptive to like Burning Abyss, PK Fire, and Pendulums. Because if you're playing a Pendulum deck, you want your stuff hitting the face up. You know, you want your stuff hitting the extra deck face up. You don't want your monsters getting spun back to the deck so that you can never Pendulum summon and you don't have any tangible resources. Same thing with Burning Abyss. You want your monsters hitting the graveyard so that they can trigger. You want them there so that you can use Seer later in the duel to revive them. You want them in the graveyard so that you can use Babar. Same thing with Phantom Knights. You want to be able to revive your monsters using the spells or traps, but if your monsters are always getting sent back to your deck, then you don't really get that dual utility. So I see this card as in a different version of Cosmo. I definitely can see this card seeing some play. And again, it gives you another way to gain life points. So you can't just run over, you know, a Straw Man or a Tin Can if they don't have a big Cosmo ship and, you know, do a bunch of battle damage because they'll gain it anyways. Now, here's a little tidbit that I think I've uncovered. So you see the picture right here of what's it called? Of Cosmorning. You see Wicked Witch. You see, or excuse me, you see Farm Girl. You see Good Witch. In my opinion, here's what I think this is. I'm pretty sure that this figure right here, this lady who is gorgeous, man. The good ones always die young. I'm pretty sure that that is Cosmo Dark Lady. I'm pretty sure that this is her because if you look at this dress right here, looks pretty damn similar to this. The black dress with the stripes. You see the black dress with the stripes. And what I think is, just like in the movie Star Wars, I believe that Dark Lady is actually Farm Girl's mother, just as Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. You know, spoiler alert for a movie that came out in the 70s. But I'm pretty sure that that's what it is. I wanted to jump to the conclusion that these two might be sisters because, you know, like the what's it called in The Wizard of Oz, I think the two Wicked Witches were sisters, but I'm pretty sure at least that Dark Lady is in fact Farm Girl's mother. That's just my estimated guess. All right, two more cards to discuss. The first is Cattle Calling. This is another TCG exclusive. It's a quick play spell card. It says send one face-up monster you control whose original type is Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast. Special summon one monster with the same original type from your extra deck. It cannot attack. Its effects are negated, and it is destroyed during the end phase. You can only activate once per turn. Cattle Calling. Or you can only activate one Cattle Calling once per turn. Okay, so to me, this is kind of like a spell version of Raid Raptor, what's it called? Raid Raptor Last Tricks. Because essentially, in a deck like Raid Raptors, you could just summon any Raid Raptor, like let's just say Fuzzy Lanius, and then you could activate Cattle Calling. You could go right into Satellite Cannon, and then you could just skip force them to Ultimate Falcon. And we know Ultimate Falcon is pretty much a win condition because it's basically like a Towers type card. So I look at this and I'm like, you know, in certain decks like Raid Raptors, this could be kind of useful because the monster that you bring out, you know, whether it be an XC or a fusion, you kind of have to do something with that monster because it can't attack, there's no effects, and even when it dies, I don't think you can call up the Haunted it back because I think it's like Starlight Road. The monster is not considered to be properly summoned, so you really can't do much with that monster. But if you can use that monster to go into an even bigger monster in like Raid Raptors, now you're in business. And considering Raid Raptors have so many ways to rank up, you know, 4, 2, 8, 10, like this card could work pretty well on Raid Raptors. Last card is Kaiju X-Files. Continuous spell card. Each time one or more Kaiju monsters is special summon from the field or graveyard. Put one Kaiju counter on this card, 5 max. Once per turn, you can target one kaiju monster on the field, destroy it, then special summon one kaiju monster from your deck with a different original name to the controller's side of the field. You can send this card with 3 or more kaiju counters to the graveyard, add 1 kaiju spell or trap from your deck to your hand except itself. It's a damn shame that Waterfront is not a kaiju card, because this would be a searchable way of getting Waterfront. I think this card is really good for kaijus. For one, kaijus needed more cards that hold kaiju counters, because as of right now, all they have is Waterfront and Capture Mission, if I'm not mistaken, and nobody even runs Capture Mission because it's not even that good. This card not only can replace your monsters, like if your opponent happens to have the bigger kaiju, you can get a bigger monster. But even if your opponent doesn't have a kaiju, and you happen to have your own kaiju, you can just tag your kaiju out for a different one. This card will get a counter. If you have Waterfront, that'll give Waterfront a counter. I don't know. I think this card just gives kaijus a lot of utility. I wish it would have let you add 1 kaiju card instead of a kaiju spell or trap, but I think this card overall is, I think it's mandatory in the deck, because the deck just needs more ways of using kaiju counters, and it triggers, it triggers itself with its effect. And when I say triggers itself, I mean it gives itself counters with its effect, and it's also just a way of accumulating counters on Waterfront. So I think the card is pretty good. So let me know what you guys thought of these cards. Thank you for watching as always.